Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear brothers, sisters, viewers, and friends of Ikra TV. Welcome to another edition of Real Talk. This is Iqbal Bana, your host. I come into your homes every day, day in, day out, trying to bring to you issues of interest that resonate with our community, the Muslim community, and the wider community as well, about what is happening in our world at this moment in time, in our locality, locally, nationally, internationally, and how that is affecting people not just in our area but across the world as well. We've spoken about various issues over the past few years, but in the last few months we've been talking about mainly about what is happening in Palestine, and obviously the impact of the atrocious sort of bombardment and killing and murdering of innocent victims in Palestine that has been going on since the 7th of October has had everyone, all those who believe in social justice and those who believe in making sure that there's a fair society, are dealt with in a way that respects fellow human beings. Now, 7th of October, was an atrocious act committed by Hamas that we have always condemned on this program right from the day one, because that is not the way Islam teaches us to behave. We believe in respecting fellow human beings. We believe in fighting for our cause in a just way, not murdering innocent children, women and children and the elderly. But what Israel has done in return, in response to this attack, has been more than horrendous. Absolutely, it's diabolical, and many people have described it as a human genocide that has been going on since the 7th of October. And in fact, it's the second Holocaust in the last 80 years that is now we are witnessing in front of our eyes. So this has had a major impact on politics in this country. We have seen many people who are extremely frustrated and angry with our politicians, both the Tory and the Labour politicians, particularly the Labour politicians, because the black and minority ethnic community, particularly the Muslim community, has been a staunch supporter of the Labour Party, has been adamant in their commitment and their support for the Labour Party since the 50s and the 60s, when our forefathers came over here. They were seen as the party of the working class, the ones who supported and enamored working class people to the rights that they now sometimes deserve, and do deserve quite richly. Now, over the last few months, in particular after the attacks on 7/7, there has been a tremendous upswell of hatred or dislike or discord against the Labour Party. And this has been witnessed by a number of organizations that have been recently set up, looking to try and make sure that the Labour Party does not succeed wherever they are or wherever they stand. There's a big effort going on to make sure that Labour councillors who have failed to resign on this particular issue of the genocide of Palestinians are accounted for and challenged for what they believe in, and that is not interference with protecting the people of Palestine. Many councillors have resigned, as we have seen across the country. People like Councillor Anwar from Burnley, etc., and his colleagues, people in Oxford, people in Manchester, and across the country, many people have resigned on the fact that their party is not supporting a ceasefire in Israel. And elections are the time when people can cast their vote and make their views known. And one such election is taking place in Rochdale, where the late Tony Lloyd, Sir Tony Lloyd, who was a very strong supporter of Palestine, as I understand it, has recently passed away, and which has caused a by-election. And there, Mr. George Galloway, who many people will be familiar with, has put his name in the ring to stand as a Member of Parliament, and he does so on the fact that he is a campaigner and champion of the people of Palestine. And I wanted to talk about the impact of George Galloway, the feelings of people in Rochdale, and I have none other than my very well-known, esteemed guest who comes on my program regularly, sharing his political knowledge and thoughts and his experience and his views. I consider to be one of the most eminent political analysts in our country, who has worked at the highest level of government in this country, and that is Maqsood Ahmed. So Maqsood Ahmed, I know you're not here in the studio, but you sat at home, hopefully in a nice warm climate at home. Thank you very much for joining me. Thank you for coming from Rochdale. Your town is at the forefront of this political campaigning that is currently going on. It'll be interesting to see how that campaign and the outcome of that result, of that sort of campaign, the election, is sort of reflected in these heightened times at this moment in time. Now, obviously, living in Rochdale, born and bred, maybe in, I don't know, were you born in Rochdale?
No, not born in Rochdale, but lived here all my life, Iqbal Bhai.
All
And
right.
Assalamu alaikum to all your listeners and viewers. Thank you for inviting me back again.
You're more than welcome. I mean, obviously, you're almost a child of Rochdale anyway. As I say, that's your home. You grew up there. You've been involved in the politics. And now in the past, you have been one of those like me, a very strong supporter of the Labour Party. And I think, as if I remember correctly, you are also like me, very disenfranchised and disheartened by the Labour Party's position on this particular issue of Palestine at the moment. So how do you feel the people of Rochdale are feeling at the moment in terms of should they continue to support the Labour Party, or is there a big campaign like there is in Batley and Dewsbury and in Bradford to try and oust those Labour councillors who have refused steadfastly to resign from the Labour Party for whatever reason?
I think this is it's a sad occasion, but an exciting time for Rochdale as well. Sad in the sense of the 30,000 Palestinian lives lost and so forth, and also some of the Israeli lost, 120 of Israeli lost, mainly soldiers. But I think for the first time, Rochdale has a choice in George Galloway. George Galloway has got a track record, and the Labour Party obviously is trying very hard to win over, particularly the Muslim community, in a sense, because after their leaders' comments about supporting Israel and so forth. So I think for the first time ever, Rochdalians have actually a choice of who they want to vote, and it'll be interesting to see how Labour actually responds to that. We talk about Labour mainly, but it's because Conservatives hardly ever win Rochdale as as an MP. To be honest with you, they tried to put up candidates, but they weren't successful. Liberal Democrats have been successful in the past, and in a sense, so Liberal Democrats are also, in the loop, if you want to call it, with regards to that. But it's going to be a very, very interesting by-election.
So is it going to be sort of a Labour versus George Galloway rather than Labour versus Tories and Liberals? I mean, you remember Cyril Smith many, many, many moons ago was a long-standing MP of Rochdale, had been for many, many years. And since he he changed, it went to Labour after that, and Labour have been holding it. And I think Tony Lloyd, I met him once in Rochdale at an event for Palestine, and he struck me as one of those friends of Palestine rather than some of his other colleagues in the Labour Party. So I'm sure a lot of people will remember him very fondly in Rochdale, and it'll be a sad loss. But in terms of the Labour Party, I think they put up a Muslim Asian candidate against George Galloway. Do you think the Muslim community will see through that as a ploy on behalf of the Labour Party to try and retain the Muslim vote, and therefore they put an Asian candidate there?
Yeah, Tony Lloyd, we had a gentleman basically in a sense on it. But, my condolences go out to his family.
So do ours.
I'm sure you will
So
as
do
well.
ours,
So
yeah.
yours. He was a gentleman. Yes, he supported the Palestinian issue. But Tony was also basically, in one sense, stuck with the policy of Labour Party, which was basically to support, especially when Keir Starmer came in, it was very, very pro-Israel stance, the policy on it. So no matter how much you vote for Labour, the policy does not change. The policy is that they will support Israel, and that's been the biggest challenge for the Muslim community in particular. But I'm pleased to say it's not just the Muslim community. I've been on many marches, and you'll see the Jewish voice there. You'll see lots of Jewish people, non-Jewish people, white people, people from all color and all background, all ages, really, Iqbal Bhai. So there is this consciousness about Palestine that's been awakening throughout the country and throughout the world. Where the Labour Party members, especially the MPs, I think struggle is the policy of the Labour Party. It seems to be very similar to the Conservative Party. And this is where they are really, really struggling. No matter how much individually they want to help the Palestinian and be on the right side of the Palestine, sadly, the policy of the Labour Party don't change. So Rochdalians are looking at the policy of the political parties, and Conservative Party policy on Israel and Labour is exactly the same. And that's why there is no choice except for George Galloway. His policy is completely different. It is the opposite to Labour Party. And he's on the side of justice, as he says. Are you with me? So it'd be very interesting to find out which way the vote swings. And that, I think, for the first time, Labour are in a very, very difficult position where they automatically got the votes of the Muslim community that swung them over every time there was election, except for the Liberal Democrats when they did very well. I think they find themselves in that position again for the first time again. With George coming in, throwing his hat in, I think that's made things very, very difficult for the Labour Party.
Do you know, I mean, obviously Tony Lloyd was an MP for quite a while, so he must have had a healthy majority at that time in the last general election. So to turn over that big healthy majority is going to be an enormous task. Do you feel that there's a sufficient movement within the Muslim community at the moment within Rochdale that feels that, yes, this is the time when we need to take a stock of where we are, take a stock of the party that we're following, look at where that party stands, as you say, in relation to Palestine, we'll come to other issues, and therefore there is a groundswell of wanting to change that narrative and sort of the allegiances?
Yeah, yes, it is. I think it's not just a Palestine issue. If you look at Rochdale, if you look at the senior management of Rochdale, there are hardly any Muslims in there. If you look at the health inequalities of Muslims within Rochdale, very, very poor. If you look at the social economics positions that the Muslims are in and other white working class people are in Rochdale, it's very, very poor. Are you with me? Rochdale is not producing the manufacturing that it did once. You know, I remember working for Thomas Robinson's design engineers who used to make flour milling machines. They employed about 3,000 people just down the road where I live. They had engineering companies, they had manufacturing, they had a cotton industry. So if you look at all that over the years, that's been depleted. There isn't much left in Rochdale that they can be proud of, unfortunately. So it's not just about the foreign policy. The foreign policy is very, very important for people, because we can't be said that we are fair, just society in United Kingdom, but we don't really care about equality and fairness internationally across the world. So they both are linked, and intelligent people are making that sort of linkage in the sense, do we really want to vote for a party that is starving 2.4 million people in Gaza and Palestine? And that's been the sort of the gut of it. So there is this consciousness that's been raised through Palestinian issue that's happened, and I think it's got the Muslims in particular thinking twice about who do they vote. And secondly, Iqbal Bhai, I think there has been this complacency from Labour Party. They had loyal supporters within the Muslim community all their life, my family and the others. In a sense, and they feel that they've been taken for granted for nearly 40 to 50 years. And I think now the second generation of young British Rochdalians have woken up and saying, hang on a minute, well, why am I voting for a party that unemployment is high, they can't get a job, they got a degree, they're working in Asda's or Tesco's on a petrol station? These are the type of questions that are being asked. You know, issues around right wing is rising within Rochdale and Greater Manchester. Islamophobia is rising within Greater Manchester. And yet we got more councillors and MPs than ever before. So it doesn't go together.
You feel, I mean, it doesn't make sense, does it? The policies and the practice of the institutions are not changing at all. And I think you're quite right. I mean, you know, you and I have been at the forefront of politics and in political parties as well for many, many years, in the hope that when we're inside, we can try and change it. But we know for a fact that after 45 years, in my case, we've not been able to change it, and that, you know, we are where we are. Do you see, I mean, one of the accusations that we have against our community is this biradari system, that the biradari system will elect people because they have that structure within the community. Now, obviously, you have a Muslim candidate being put up by the Labour Party. I know he's a leader of the council, you know, the Lancashire Council. Does that person have that strength within Rochdale itself to swing that biradari vote in favour of him at the moment?
The Member of Parliament has a responsibility for inputting into policy.
Oh, yeah.
The question people are asking Iqbal Bhai is that, does Azhar Ali have the influence and the skill sets to convince Keir Starmer that the policy on Palestine has to change. Now, has he got that ability? Can he influence that? And I think the answer is no, he can't. Not one MP can do that. We've had Muslim MPs who have failed to influence their own political party with the issues that affects the Muslim community, and they have come short every time. Whether it's on Kashmir, whether it's on Pakistan, whether it's on Palestine, again and again and again, all my life I've been hearing this, the things will get better. Well, they haven't got better. If you look at the reality is, we are now in a worse position than we were in the 70s and the 80s. And it's sad for me to say that. Yes, we may have color TVs and we may have central heating, and we didn't have color TVs in the 70s, nor central heating, but that's not the benchmark for the intellectual Muslims now. The benchmark for the intellectual Muslims, how are we respected as British citizens? Are we valued? When we say things, does people take them on board? Are we influencing? Are we part of the British society? And are we accepted? And if you look at now on the social media, the two things we're known for across the country and we get stereotyped into is terrorism and grooming.
Yes.
Surely we have a lot more to offer than those two areas, Iqbal Bhai. And where are our political members, our representatives who we have been electing time and time again? So the question now is that, do we have the right people that can influence their political parties? And the question from my angle is, well, if they were the right people in the past, we would not be in the position that we're in.
So, I mean, that is a very important point. And I think this is something that we are seeing in West Yorkshire, for example, in Kirklees area. A lot of young people now getting engaged because they've realized that, within the existing institutions, the political parties, there is very little room where they will listen to what people are actually saying, right? And therefore, we've not seen any changes taking place. In fact, going back to your point, compared to what it was like 20 years ago, it seems like we've gone backwards to a certain extent, quite to a large extent. And obviously, there are a lot of concerns about our existing representatives in local government or in Parliament. Now, obviously, this is a huge issue. Now, coming back to Rochdale in particular with George Galloway, do you feel that obviously he's from outside? Now, he has a track record, he's got a history of standing in places, and one of the accusations placed on him is that he is a one-man band and he's more interested in George Galloway than anything else. So if this is a protest vote, which most people are saying it will be, to show the Labour Party that they cannot take the Labour or the Muslim vote for granted, which is something, like you say, they've been doing for the last 50 years, do you feel that that protest vote will have any impact on wider policy?
I think so. For example, if George Galloway wins here, that will send a strong signal to Keir Starmer that you can't take the Muslim vote for granted.
Right.
And don't forget, without a shadow of a doubt, if George Galloway wins, it will be winning because of the Muslim vote.
Oh, definitely.
There's no question about that. But that doesn't mean he doesn't need to work hard for the white people's vote. Are you with me? The white Rochdalians, he needs that as well. Without them, he's not going to win. And there are lots of good white people who actually feel and see what's happening in Palestine. Their consciousness is also increased. So it's not just about getting the Muslim vote, it's getting the vote. And I think...
Maqsood, I'm going to stop you for a second. Now, we're going to go for a break. Inshallah, we'll come back. What I can say to the viewers who are watching, if you're watching this program and you're interested in this debate, obviously it's going to have a major impact on the policies of this country. Please phone in 01274 214 299. The number will come up. Inshallah, I'll see you soon. Take care. Assalamu alaikum.